Hey everybody, it's Dr. Sarah Gottfried. Welcome back to the Health Show. We've got Dr. Pedram Shojai here. Hey Pedram.
Hi everybody.
So I am so excited. I'm doing, the happy dance here because we've got Tom Malterre with us. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you. It's just my deepest pleasure to talk with you today about the microbiome. And guys, here's the deal. Tom Malterre is one of the best integrationists that I've come across. He's a certified nutritionist at the state of Washington, and he just pulls together, connects the dots like nobody else. We're going to talk today about the microbiome and make it really come alive for you. So Tom, how does that sound?
Oh, it sounds like a lot of fun. It's long overdue. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I wanted to start first with, this idea that modern life, really, the exposures of modern life is mucking with our microbiome. It's taking it down. And I want to ask you maybe at the beginning to start with, when we're babies coming into this world, like what happens? Talk about that initiation, that inoculation, and then maybe a bit about the microbiome itself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So first off, let's talk about life on this planet. So life on this planet did not occur with humans immediately. What occurred was we had this bubbling soup, and out of this bubbling soup came these single-cell organisms, and out of these single-cell organisms, those evolved over time to these little bacterium, as we know them, which are everywhere, right? If you travel down into the deepest troughs of the ocean, you'll find these bacterium, these microbes that make up part of the microbiome. And then you have the 30,000 foot up in the atmosphere, you have all these little bacterium, these little microbes that participate in the weather processes. And then you have them in the soil, right? They are breaking down the minerals. They are interacting with the roots of plants. So you have these trillions upon trillions of organisms everywhere you look, everywhere you breathe, everywhere you step, everywhere you drink. They're everywhere. This is a microbiome basically means a micro ecosystem, a micro environment, or what I like to say, a micro universe. So we have this little microscopic, beyond the eye universe everywhere. It's everywhere. You can't avoid it. It's sloughing off of your skin right now. It's in the air that you're breathing. It's everywhere. Okay? So,
bubbling soup. I gotta just say, the bubbling soup, I'm thinking about how I've been reading on your website about a bubbling kitchen. So we're going to have to loop back to the bubbling kitchen a little later and how it can help your microbiome.
Absolutely. We'll do that. We'll get the bubbling in the bubbling. It'll be bubbling. So the piece that's interesting is that we are floating around inside mom, right? We're in the womb. And when we're in the womb, it's a relatively what's called sterile environment, right? Inside that placenta, we're not exposed to these organisms. But during the birthing process, and even prior to the birthing process, like during the third trimester, the mom will shift her entire colonies of organisms that are in her intestines. So the interesting thing is that the head of the baby comes out in the birth canal in such a manner that it actually presses against the cecum. It actually presses against the very same area in the mom who's been colonizing all these bacterium in that third trimester, as if it's not an accident. That some of that will get onto the child as the child is coming out. Now, in our modern day society, we say, are you kidding me? That's just insane. That's just gross. Come on. You don't want any exposure from the content of mom on the baby. But my goodness, what if that's what nature had intended? What if we're supposed to be getting a little bit of that colonization? What if we're supposed to be having the microbes that mom has been brewing her entire lifetime?
Whoa. Okay, this is so exciting. And also, Pedram just went through this process. But I just have to jump in, as obstetrician girl and just say, like, I've never heard anyone pull this together, like knit it together in such a way of, head coming through the vaginal canal and pressing against the cecum. This is so interesting. I just want to be like shouting it from the rooftops. Okay, please continue.
Okay, so as you know, I'm a father of 5 children, so I've been there in the process for every single one of those births. And we had 3 of those births were at home. And I watched this process occur. And the first thing everybody does is, try and keep the environment as sterile as possible in a normal environment. In our home birthing environment, they did not press for that, which I thought was interesting. And so immediately, you know, as I'm reading through the research and I'm putting all these pieces together, I'm like, oh, well, you know, what if? What if that's exactly what's supposed to happen? You see, because you're going to get some of the passage of the organisms from mom's cecum actually to the vaginal canal naturally. It just occurs. There's constant migration of bacterium all the time. You're going to get a part of the exposure, the inoculation of a child at birth through the vaginal canal. And perhaps you're supposed to be getting a little bit of the inoculation, the exposure to these micro-universes via the mom's defecation at birth. So between those two, you're going to have some on the skin. You're eventually going to get some actually in the nasal passage, in the mouth, through the vaginal passage of the child. And then the child will then, what Dr. Diedert from Cornell University most eloquently says, will complete itself.
Ooh, oh my gosh. This is like a...
Now, think of it.
This is a mystical journey along with a very physical journey. And I just want to say, Pedram, what happened in the birthing room is going to stay in the birthing room. I want to protect your wife and any comment about her. I just want to say that. And then, Tom, I don't want to pause you at all, but I just want to say that not all of us use the word cecum every day. Could you just tell us what the heck that thing is?
Sure. The lower portion right before you pass out things from the other end of your body. So you have the mouth, you have the anus. Cecum right before the anus. So pressure there means you're going to be pushing some poop out.
Good.
And
okay, we can say poop on this show.
Yeah, so baby's head squeezes out some poop, and mom prepared that poop, so baby gets exposed to the bacteria that mom has kind of grown for baby to complete it, is what I'm hearing here.
Yes.
And nice use of third person, Pedram, I might add.
I try, you know.
Yeah.
I'm ESL.
Right. And, you know, the interesting thing is we're seeing in the literature that you don't just pass on, Mom, the genetics for the mitochondria. You don't just pass on your portion of the genome. You pass on your microbiome to the next generation. So it's incredibly important for that child to have the species that you have to survive and thrive in the environment in which you have been existing in, that child is now exposed to. But the story doesn't stop there. It becomes even more eloquent and ingenious. And that you will take that child, and I've watched this, a child knows what to do. You'll have it on the chest, and immediately it'll start suckling on the breast. And when it's doing that, did you know that up to the third largest mass of substance in breast milk, the third largest substance in breast milk is something that your child will never, ever digest and absorb? Why
Awesome.
would nature ever, in its right mind, put a substance in breast milk if it wasn't essential for the survival of your infant? Why wouldn't it? But it turns out it is. But see, the mystery is there are these components called human milk oligosaccharides, HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides. They are specific foods that are exactly designed to be cleaved by specific bacterium. So what I'm implying is that Mother Nature is wise, and that mothers of the human species are wise, and that they produce the exact food to feed certain organisms that protect infants from harm. Now, if you look at human milk oligosaccharides versus primate oligosaccharides, they're different. If you look at the oligosaccharides produced across different species, it's very species specific, as if we're supposed to have very specific organisms surviving and thriving in our intestinal tract. So one is the Bifidobacterium infantis. So the infantis organism, now that they're looking at it, they say, oh my gosh, look at how eloquent this one organism that thrives off this one milk oligosaccharide from human moms, look at how eloquent it is at protecting infants from pathogen exposure, so infectious agents. Look at how eloquent this is at helping to digest these foods coming from mom, to produce byproducts that are healthy for the baby. Look at how eloquent it is at actually talking to the intestinal cells and thereby the immune cells right away from the intestines that will program that child not to be too reactive in life. Because many people don't realize that we actually have proteins sticking out of our intestinal tracts, these little proteins. They're hanging out, these little toll-like receptors, right? And they're waiting to be bound by portions of bacterium. And when these portions of bacterium bind those little receptors, they send a signal down across the intestines to the immune cells that says, hey guys, please disperse. There's nothing to see here. Relax. Everything's cool. Everything's calm. Chill out. Nothing to worry about. But when those organisms are not around and those receptors are not bound, what happens is you have the opposite. The immune cells get restless. They get hyperactive. They start perceiving things like pollen or dust mites or foods as being foreign, as being something to attack. So what do we see? We see more allergies. We see more eczema. We see more asthma. We see the immune cells not being at peace. So the whole job of the immune system, on average, is not to go out and attack things. No, gosh, if we did that all the time, we'd all have autoimmune diseases and we'd be killing ourselves, right? We don't want to attack everything.
Arguably, we do.
Yeah. You want to recognize that certain things are safe and tolerate them. Tolerate them. So this tolerance, this ability to stay calm is something that the bacterium trained the immune cells to do. So that's an interesting process, right? I mean, think about that for a second.
So
you say,
I've actually been thinking about this a lot because both of you all are in my next movie, and there's a lot of conversation we've had about this. And the more I think about it, the more it just kind of hits me in the head. I mean, this web of life that you're talking about, right? That kind of envelops us and kind of, it, you know, is the glue that binds us all and transfers from mom to baby generationally. It's so symbiotic that it's almost impossible to dissect us from the bacteria and understand that those bacterium are really a part of this feedback mechanism we have with the earth. So I would really like to talk about hand sanitizer and our sterilizing agents and all the things that we've been doing to kind of kill the bugs and kill the germs, because it sounds like we took a wrong turn at some point, because at this point so many people are having leaky gut and autoimmune disorders and problems that are emerging from the lack of this relationship. I mean, the severance of this relationship is causing more harm than I think I mean, mainstream media might jump on this in 10 years, but all the doctors that know are screaming this now. Yeah. So there's a couple of different books that people can summarize for themselves. Of course, Missing Microbes by Blazer was great, and Epidemic of Absence is another beautiful book. And they both focus on this same theme. And this same theme is we are missing some of our beneficial, calming friends. The bacterium that would tame our immune cells, the bacterium that would provide nutrition, the bacterium that would protect us from overgrowth of other organisms. So we're missing these microbes, and Blazer is guessing, gosh, we might have up to a third of our microbiome that could be missing from our indigenous relatives of years past. And it's these missing microbes, if you look closely, that are likely behind irritable bowel, autoimmune disease, all these leaky gut issues, and even small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And in fact, there's a conference coming up in Arkansas on the 26th of June that's looking at microbiome and autism. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Jim Adams, which I have an interview of, he's saying, look, we can track back to the specific organisms in autism that are missing. And they change then the child's interaction with their environment and the stimulation to the brain. You know, people forget that these organisms produce fatty acids that talk directly to the brain. That's Dr. McFab's work from Canada. So, fabulous, right? You start talking about antibiotics at birth,
How many people are strep B positive and therefore they get antibiotics right at birth?
I was strep B positive. I tried to wait as long as possible to go into the hospital. My husband was like, "Tick-tock, come on, I need to race you there." And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to get those antibiotics. I want to, like, if I show up and deliver in 5 minutes, I will consider that a perfect birth.
Right, right. So that's the thing, right? Is that a lot of people will test positive, and therefore they're going to get those at birth. But if you look, and I have a really nice review paper I'm happy to share with you, they're not quite sure you get the protection you want from those antibiotics. And yet what you do is you completely change the exposure of both the mom and then, of course, this new child who's wanting to complete themselves. Right? They can't get that inoculation. They can't get those organisms initially. And then they end up colonizing whatever organisms are in these sterile hospital rooms. And they're usually skin organisms from the nursing staff or the doctors or whatnot. They're not this incredible diverse soup that mom would have passed in the birthing process. So what we're seeing in all these diseases, in short, is a lack of biodiversity, a lack of a number of organisms. So we'll talk about the hand sanitizers in a second, but let's talk about the beneficial stuff. What do you see in the research? What do you see protects people from these allergies and these autoimmune diseases? Large families, animals, living on farms, but they have to be organic farms. Because it turns out when you use cytal agents, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, what are those? Those are killing agents. These killing agents are very good at what they do. They kill insects. They kill weeds, like Roundup kills weeds, right? But what we're seeing with these agents as well is they are very eloquent at killing microbes. They can shift the availability of these microbes in the environment, which will then provide a different exposure to humans and to animals. My goodness, the data coming out of the Midwest right now is showing in Indiana, the rhizosphere, the organism soup in the soil that normally allows minerals to fix to root nodules and forms the root nodules themselves and allows plants to grow. Those are being shifted from these hundreds of millions of pounds of Roundup that are being used every year. Right? So you have
and we've talked quite a bit about Roundup and how it completely takes down your biology. I want to make sure that we've got some practical solutions and applications here. And so you dropped a truth bomb about losing a third of the microbiome. I really love the work of Martin Blaser, and I want to just call out his book, Missing Microbes. I think it's such a great book. And you mentioned SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And I feel like everywhere I look, I'm seeing SIBO. So could you connect the dots for us, Tom, on SIBO? Maybe just back up for a moment and say, what is SIBO? How do you know you have it? What do you do about it? Could you give us some practical info on that?
Sure. That's kind of it could be a lengthy conversation, so I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible. This bacterial overgrowth in the small intestines wouldn't normally happen. Normally, you would move these food particles that you consume through every 4 hours via something called the migrating motor complex, and you would flush out the upper intestinal tract. You wouldn't have extra food, you wouldn't have extra organisms, but if you have foods that hang out in the upper intestinal tract and feed organisms, they will overgrow. And once those organisms overgrow, they can cause havoc, right? They can wreak havoc. They can change your digestive process, your absorptive process. They can cause inflammation in the upper intestinal tract, which can lead to a leaky gut. You can have all sorts of issues. So the goal is not too many organisms up in that upper space. Now, there are multiple different factors. You have to be secreting enough acid. You have to be secreting enough bile, enough pancreatic enzymes. Those would help keep the organisms down. And the digestive process of people is interrupted when they are not producing enough energy. So why do I mention that? Because I'm going to go back to something. This didn't happen. Nobody had SIBO 50 years ago. Have you heard about SIBO 50 years ago? I mean, it was rare cases, right? Why all of a sudden now is everybody suffering from these digestive disorders, these gut problems? Why can't they digest carbohydrates and starches? Why does everybody feel so good on a paleo diet or a specific carbohydrate diet when they're avoiding a lot of these processed foods, these what's called acellular carbohydrates? Why? Why do they feel so much better when they do things like that? It's because we're missing the organisms that would normally digest those starches, and we're not allowing that migrating motor complex to work as well. And there are some theories that that whole thing is caused by an autoimmune response. So wait a second. This is going to go down an interesting alley. But Dr. Pimentel has been saying, I think it's an autoimmune response. If people get an infection in their gut, like they go traveling and they get gastroenteritis, traveler's diarrhea, and then the bacterial proteins that are produced will mimic, they look exactly like the nerves in the intestinal tract that allow it to cause contractions, this vinculin protein. It attacks it, and all of a sudden their migrating motor complex doesn't work very well. They back up, they have this overgrowth. Then when those people consume foods that are rich in fermentable starches, perhaps you've heard of FODMAPs, fermentable oligosaccharide, monosaccharide, the disaccharide, it's actually FOD, oligosaccharide, disaccharide, mono, and polylols. So there's certain starches they consume, and all of a sudden they feed these organisms. The organisms go nuts, inflammation, bloating, and they feel terrible, right? This is a lot of what IBS is these days. They're saying up to 84% on certain testing will show that IBS patients, 84% may have this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But why? Why? Why isn't the migrating motor complex working? Why are they having these autoimmune responses? Is it just that they got that bacterial infection to begin with? Why would they get a bacterial infection to begin with? Missing microbes.
The good guys are missing.
If you had the good guys to crowd out the infections, if you were consuming very bitter foods, very antimicrobial food, come on, every culinary herb you can think of, if you came hiking with me, for example, and you went out into the woods and you started eating some of the roots, fruits, and shoots that I consume on a daily basis, right? I have dandelion, and I have plantain, and I'm digging up some Oregon grapefruit, and I'm having some devil's club root. All these tannins, all these alkaloids that I'm getting from the berberine, they are commonly known as antimicrobials or microbe balancing substances.
Can we talk about that for a second? I got a question for one of our listeners, Eric, right now, and talking about the undigestible starches and what they do kind of lower down in the intestinal tract. And I kind of want to loop this back in because we have a lot of confusion out there, and everyone's taking 50 billion probiotics every day and trying to say, well, I took the probiotics and I still feel like crap, or I'm still bloated, and so we obviously need a prebiotic milieu. We obviously need to change how we're feeding the bad bacteria. What are these undigestible starches doing for adults? Like, we kind of get what they did for baby and how important that was, and we could all look back and say, oh God, I blew it, right? But now how do we fix it? What can we do to shift this?
That's such an excellent question. And I want to address a couple of different things that you talked about, Pedram. Number one, you talked about we're all taking all these probiotics right now. And there's phenomenal data showing that the adherence of some of these organisms can protect the intestinal tract from pathogens and give you a benefit of producing more nutrients. That's wonderful. Those are great. But to be honest with you, we don't have human probiotics yet. We don't have the organisms that we're flourishing right now in our intestinal tract. What we have is what we've been studying for a long time. So nutrition, life, is way too complex for us to understand. We've had 50 to 100 years to try and understand it. We're just now beginning to see who lives in our intestinal tract, who's responsible for digesting some of these starches. So we're far from the actual probiotics that will assist us in this process. But I can guarantee you there are people around the globe, right now in Norway, there's some people working on human-based probiotics that are kind of like fecal transplants in a pill that will help you with that digestive process. They're not here yet, right? But
real quickly, I've seen some studies on this, and it's just fascinating to me, where you could take someone with, say, that was having psychotic episodes, someone who's had really kind of a long history of psychiatric illness and do some of these transplants, and all of a sudden their personality changes, they calm down, and they're clear out of the DSM-5. I mean, to me that is amazing, because everyone should be harvesting the Dalai Lama's poop. You know what I mean? Like,
I want his poop.
Totally.
You know
Can
what?
you share?
You guys joke about this, but think about this for a second, right? Who's the person on this planet that everybody thinks of as being the most well-grounded and peaceful and loving? A lot of times people reference Jesus Christ. And I don't mean to be facetious or sacrilegious by any means, but think about this for a second. Jesus was born in a manger. Jesus was surrounded by animals. Jesus was surrounded by people. Jesus had microbiome coming from the 3 wise men from all over the world. Jesus had antimicrobial herbs handed to him, the myrrh, the frankincense. So, could that be the optimal birthing environment for someone to have an immaculate life? I don't know. But that's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? I mean, where he came from, we could all be coming from if we tried to be conscious of the fact that we're living in a world of 2 universes, the one that you see and the one that you can't see. So let's go, Pedram, we talked about the probiotics. We said, okay, we're on our way to those, right? We talked about now inoculation at birth, being conscious of inoculation at birth. Then we talked a little bit about the plants, right? We're talking about how when you consume certain bitter substances, the alkaloids I mentioned, they will change how bacterium can communicate with each other. They'll change how they form biofilms in the upper intestinal tract. They'll change who can colonize and who can't from this chyme, this food that's coming out of the stomach, right? Because those chemicals in the plants will shift who can survive there. Now, if you are consuming the foods of commerce of today, you will likely be feeding a ton of food to organisms that can grow really quickly. So if you're out of balance, these starches that your friend had asked about, these starches will feed your out of balanced microbes. Okay, so these starches normally are considered prebiotics. Normally, in a healthy person, they would be phenomenal. They would come down, you would be consuming grains and beans and whatever else has a lot of fibers, and you wouldn't have an issue. You would be feeding the organisms, they would be happy, you would be happy. That's why perhaps you see all these studies on legume consumption, prolonging life. It's when someone has a balanced microbiome and you feed that microbiome, everything is going great. Once that microbiome is out of balance, and you have certain organisms that can flourish on those starches, out of balance from the protective organisms that keep them in check, that's when you have problems.
Okay,
so the starches aren't the issue. It's the environment in which the starches are in that's the issue.
You know what? I love that. So now I'm a listener going, all right, this guy sounds really smart. What do I do? Do I even have this problem? So can you lay out, what does it look like? If someone has a microbiome out of balance, what would be the symptoms? And then what would be the quick fixes in a dietary sense to really start shifting that balance back so that the good guys can start getting back in the game here?
Absolutely. So let's talk on SIBO. Since maybe if you have irritable bowel, then 84% of those people may have this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You may want to see a GI specialist who will do a lactulose breath test, and this can then diagnose them if they have the SIBO. How do you know that you're a candidate? Great question. Your primary symptom will be bloating and distension. You may also have gas. You may also have nausea. The other piece is you'll track your bowel movements. And if you consistently, over a multiple month period, usually 3 months or so, you have either diarrhea, constipation, or a mix of the two. So you're feeling to yourself, this is sporadic, this is not normal, something is wrong here. It's taking longer for me to pass a bowel movement, or I'm passing more than I need to in a day, 3, 4 plus bowel movements a day. Maybe they're urgent, maybe they're watery, and you say to yourself, this doesn't seem normal. Then you present that to your doctor and you say, I'm interested. If you want a wonderful site on SIBO, Alison Seibecker, she put out the SIBOinfo.com site. She has a ton of information there in which you can pass your physician. There's a resource button. Click those documents out, pass them to your physician and say, I'm interested in this. Can you test me? And then once that person tests positive, you have a couple of different treatment options. You can do an elemental diet. You can do something called an SCD, a specific carbohydrate diet that may also include FODMAPs. And then you could also do the antibiotics, and they could be either conventional antibiotics or herbal antibiotics. The herbals would include things like garlic or neem or berberine, or all three. So you have your options once you go down that realm. What I recommend immediately is that people chew more. If you chew, you're going to break down your food, leave less for the organisms to digest for you. And when they digest, they grow, right? I would also recommend that you don't eat too much. Too much in one sitting won't allow you to process your food quickly, and you will then allow more for the organisms to process. It makes sense. If you're noticing a lot of bloating within 15, 20 minutes after eating, consider checking your gastric acid. Betaine HCl test is what it's called. And some naturopathic physicians and alternative medicine doctors, Sarah, I'm sure you do this, you will give people betaine HCl and see if they get better from that bloating. So you look at your digestive secretions coming from your stomach, your acid, and then maybe pancreatic enzymes as well. There's lots of different steps. I suggest working with your alternative medicine practitioner and getting to the root of why you're not digesting and why are things out of balance in your upper intestinal tract. So you have to answer those questions for yourself.
This is great, Tom. And I want to have my sexy librarian moment and recap some of these fabulous suggestions and truth bombs that you've dropped. Before I do that, I wanted to just ask you, I think we cut you off when you were starting on the roots, shoots, and something. You had a nice little mnemonic there. What was that?
Roots, shoots, and fruits?
Oh, yes. Very good. And for people who want to learn more about you and especially learn about your broccoli sprouts, which I'm a big fan of, and your bubbling kitchen and how you can do that with your kids, what's the best website for them to go to?
WholeLifeNutrition.net.
Right on.
WholeLifeNutrition.net is our website, and it will be building out, and you'll see, I was just out in the woods shooting some videos with my kids the other day, so we'll have that stuff up pretty soon. And then my wife has a beautiful recipe blog called Nourishing Meals. And Nourishing Meals is just recipes. She just gives you these wonderful whole foods, gluten-free recipes. So you can check that out as well. But yeah, we also have our books, Whole Life Nutrition Cookbook, which is the primer cookbook if you're wanting to know how to eat whole foods and you want to have cultured vegetables in your kitchen and whatnot. That's great. If you're concerned about feeding your family natural foods, the Whole Life Nutrition Cookbook is a beginner, and then you can go on to Nourishing Meals, and Nourishing Meals kind of completes that picture. So check those out.
Terrific. Okay, quick recap here. Yeah. So here's the top 10 list. I feel like David Letterman. Number 1, you pass on your microbiome to your baby. Your baby completes itself.
Yes.
Number 2, the third largest substance in breast milk is the HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides, designed to be cleaved by specific bacteria that you want to promote.
Yes.
Now, number 3 is if you don't have HMOs, you get more allergies, asthma, autism. Your immune cells are not at peace. Number 4, you mentioned Missing Microbes, the book by Martin Blaser. It's such a great book. And how you highlighted this truth bomb. We're missing up to a third of our microbiome that we inherited from our ancestors. Number 5, you talked about the link between the microbiome and autism and the lack of biodiversity. Number 6, what protects your health is a number of things. I like this. And Pedram, I think you have every single one of these. Large families, surrounded by animals, living on an organic farm.
Not quite.
Well, close. No pesticides, no fertilizers. Number 7, you talked about SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, how it was rare 50 years ago. You can't digest carbs. You feel better on SCD and FODMAPs. And I wrote this down. I don't think I have it quite right. The migrating microbe motorcade, it backs up and you get bloating. That's one of the most common symptoms, as well as, you like that? I'm gonna
motorcade.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It sounded like
I love it.
That's Obama's great. Coming to town. Okay. The next one, I think it's number 8. We talked about indigestible starches and how it's not the starches that are the issue. It's actually the larger environment that the starches are encountering. That's the problem in your gut. Number 9, you talked about the root shoots and fruits. We'll have to pick up another time, I think, to go into more detail. Yes. Number 10, yes. Probiotics. Now, you made this important point about how we've been studying them, but we're really pretty early in the process of understanding the full spectrum of the human microbiome. Now, I had a few more things about eating plants that protect you and fecal transplants. I think I'm going to save that for people who want to sign up for our list at healthbridgeshow.com. We will send you the recap and also a link to a recent New York Times article on fecal transplants that was fascinating. It was for a guy that had inflammatory bowel disease, but I think that's what we have time for today.
Oh my God. You know, what we need to do is have a running show and do this like, you know, a lot more often, except that, you know, we're all bouncing around. Tom, you're a genius. Love talking to you. It's just, I feel smarter every time I talk to you. So there's definitely some transfer of genius that we all got here today. So thank you very much for your time, guys. We're out. Thanks, healthbridgeshow.com. You'll get the transcripts and send us questions. Go to iTunes and give us ratings and send us questions. We are here to answer. Eric, there you go. There's your answer, buddy.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you so much, Tom, for sharing so generously.
Absolutely my pleasure. It's always great hanging with you guys. Take care.